The ordinary that terrified. The Galactic Council's chamber was silent, a silence not born of peace but of unease. The delegates, scaled, feathered, furred, and chitinous, avoided each other's eyes as the hollow display flickered above them. A single word pulsed in pale blue script, translated into a dozen tongues. Humans. Councillor Recht of the Vrolin shifted uncomfortably on his perch. His species prided themselves on emotional control, but even he could not keep the edge from his voice. They are too dangerous to be ignored. The evidence is overwhelming. A murmur spread through the chamber. Every delegation had its own encounter to recount, its own scars to show. The humans were new to the stars, barely 2 centuries past their first jump drive. And yet the galaxy already feared them. Not for their war fleets, those were small. Not for their technology. Most of it was clumsy compared to the 1,000-year-old empires. No, what unsettled the galaxy was far simpler. It was their ordinary. The hollow shifted to grainy footage from the Chthoni border. A human mining crew, stranded when raiders destroyed their escort, should have perished within days. The environment was lethal. Toxic dust, storms that ripped metal from hulls, a radiation background that cooked unshielded life. Yet the crew endured. They scavenged wreckage, patched their suits with insulation meant for pipes, and rationed water until it became thicker than blood. When the raiders returned to pick through the remains, the miners didn't beg. They attacked, with sharpened pipes, improvised explosives, and sheer ferocity. The footage ended with a raider gunship falling from the sky, flames tearing across the desert. Of the 30 miners, 20 survived. 20. The chamber was quiet again. Councillor Recht's crest feathers shivered. That was not a military unit. Not warriors. Not even trained militia. These were laborers. Yet they fought like predators. Another delegate, scaled and hulking, hissed low. On Iridan 4, human settlers were left without supply lines for 4 cycles. Any other species would have starved. They turned their barren land fertile with methods even our agronomists could not match. And when plague struck, their medics, without a proper lab, held it back with little more than fire and herbs. He lowered his voice. Their children carried buckets of disinfectant until their hands blistered. Their children. The pattern was everywhere. A freight cruise that resisted pirates with nothing but wrench and torch. A colonists who tamed worlds the galaxy had written off as uninhabitable. A medics who worked until their hearts failed, refusing to abandon the dying. The galaxy, vast and old, could not understand. To most civilizations, survival was a matter of controlled environments, of predictability. But to humanity, life was a constant storm. Cold, heat, hunger, pain, these were not enemies but lifelong companions. The ordinary human was a creature bred in hardship, molded by it, and made unbreakable. Recht tapped his talons against the console, bringing up a final recording. This one was from a battle. The councillors leaned forward instinctively, though most had already seen it. A pirate warlord, emboldened by early victories, had taken a human colony ship. The expectation was slaughter. But within hours, the warlord's forces were in retreat. Survivors reported scenes of madness. Colonists rushing attackers with kitchen knives, sealing wounds with fire, laughing as they fought. Laughing. The warlord's fleet withdrew in terror, and the colony survived. The hollow froze on the image of a human woman, bloodied, soot across her face, wielding a blade made from torn metal plating. Her eyes burned with something alien to the rest of the galaxy. Recht's voice lowered. This is their ordinary. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Finally, a thin, crystalline delegate spoke, her voice like glass breaking. If this is true, then what of the ones they call special forces? The chamber chilled. No one answered. Because no one wanted to imagine it. The arrival of the special. The dropship rode silently through the void, a dark shadow against the stars. Inside, the atmosphere was taut, electric, though none of its passengers wasted breath on chatter. They didn't need to. Every soldier aboard understood their task. Every soldier had trained for this moment until it was muscle memory burned into bone. At the head of the cabin sat Captain Elena Ward, helmet resting on her knees, eyes shut. To the untrained observer, she might have looked asleep. But her mind was awake, sifting through mission parameters, enemy strength estimates, infiltration points, civilian extraction corridors. Details slid into place, precise and unshakable. Across from her, Lieutenant Park ran final checks on his exosuit servos. Sergeant Hale quietly sharpened his combat knife, though it gleamed like a mirror already. Private Lorne tapped his fingers against his rifle in a rhythm only he seemed to hear. None of them spoke. They didn't need to. They trusted each other more than their own blood. The aliens watching them from the command ship's observation deck did not understand. Ambassador Kalek of the Theranii shifted nervously, his 4 eyes tracking the human stillness. He had seen humans before, ordinary ones. Farmers, traders, refugees. Those had unsettled him enough. But these carried themselves with a weight that made the air itself seem thinner. Are these truly soldiers? Kalek whispered to the human liaison beside him. They're the Special Forces, came the quiet reply. The best we have. Kalek's throat sacs tightened. The ordinary were already monsters. And these? The mission was simple, at least on paper. A Theranii research outpost on the moon of Valoran Prime had been overrun by the Dravari Empire. Hundreds of civilians were trapped inside, hostages to forced concessions from the Council. The Dravari were feared across the spiral, tall, armored, bred for combat. Entire fleets had fallen before their legions. The Council expected negotiation. The humans had volunteered a team instead. The dropship hit atmosphere with barely a ripple. Inside, Captain Ward rose and sealed her helmet, voice sharp and calm in the squad comms. Check weapons. Masks on. Timer starts when we breach. 8 curt replies answered her. Then silence again. The outpost loomed below, a fortress of steel ridges and glowing defense turrets. Alien watchers expected a bombardment, or at least an armored advance. Instead, the humans cut thrusters high above and free-fell the rest of the way. Black shapes plunged through the clouds like knives. At the last instant, parachutes snapped open, silent against the storm winds. They landed outside the perimeter wall without a sound. The Dravari never saw them coming. Ward's team moved like a single organism. Hale and Park scaled the wall, claws of their exosuits digging into metal. Lorne disabled sensors with a device that spat sparks and died in his hand. Within seconds, the outpost's external grid was blind. Inside, Dravari guards were laughing at their captives when the first human appeared among them. A flash of steel. A whisper of suppressed gunfire. By the time alarms began to scream, half the garrison was already down. The survivors rushed forward, towering reptilian warriors with claws like blades. They found themselves grappling with creatures half their size yet impossibly strong. Humans fought dirty, knives at joints, bullets angled up through armor gaps, boots crushing throats. They fought with precision, but also with a wildness that the Dravari, bred for ritualized combat, could not predict. One Dravari commander locked eyes with Ward as she tore her blade free from another soldier's chest. For a heartbeat, he saw not a soldier but a predator. He roared and charged. She sidestepped, hooked his arm, and with a burst of suit assist, snapped it like a twig. The civilians were found huddled in the central chamber, wide-eyed as massed humans ushered them out with calm efficiency. No hesitation, no wasted words. A child cried, and Private Lorne scooped her up without breaking stride, rifle in his other hand. By the time reinforcements arrived, the hostages were gone, escorted through escape tunnels the Dravari never even knew existed. The humans vanished like smoke. Ambassador Kalek watched the aftermath through a trembling lens feed. The Dravari had been routed, their fortress in flames. Dozens of their warriors dead. The humans, not one lost. He swallowed hard, throat clicking. The ordinary miners fought like demons. But these, his voice cracked. These are something else. Beside him, the human liaison only smiled grimly. They're special forces. And you've just seen why the galaxy should never ask what that means. War of perceptions. News traveled fast in the spiral. Faster than lightships, faster than fleets. It traveled on whispers, on shaky hollow footage uploaded to the open nets, on the terrified recollections of survivors. The Dravari fortress on Valoran Prime had not fallen to a fleet. It had not fallen to a siege. It had fallen to fewer than a dozen humans. The galaxy struggled to comprehend. On the Council's broadcast feeds, analysts replayed the same moments over and over. 8 black armored figures scaling walls, cutting down warriors twice their size, leading civilians to safety with calm precision. Commentators argued whether the footage had been fabricated. Surely no species so young could create warriors like these. Surely. But the Dravari commanders were not debating. They were mobilizing. In the Dravari war hall, General Zorath slammed his clawed fist against the stone table, cracking it. They are not gods. They are flesh. We will drown them in numbers and prove it. His plan was simple: overwhelm. Where humans excelled in precision and terror, the Dravari would respond with brute force. He dispatched 3 legions, 30,000 warriors, to crush a human supply line near the frontier. He wanted the galaxy to see the footage of humans breaking. Captain Elena Ward stood with her squad in the hangar of the Resolute Dawn when the reports came in. 30,000 soldiers. The Dravari wanted a massacre. Ward only nodded. Then we'll give them a memory they won't forget. The mission was not victory, it was time. The supply line carried refugees from 3 worlds. If the transports escaped, the mission was a success, regardless of how many Dravari came. Her squad understood. They always did. The battle began at dusk on the frontier world of Typhon's Reach. The humans took position among shattered ridges of black rock, turning them into kill zones. Mines, tripwires, collapsible choke points, every inch prepared. When the Dravari legions advanced, it was like watching a tide of armored giants sweep across the plains. Their war horns shook the ground. Then the ridge erupted. Gunfire, mines, explosives hidden beneath the soil. The first wave shattered, torn apart before they even reached the rocks. But still they came. Ward's squad fought with a fury that defied numbers. Sergeant Hale dragged wounded civilians out of fire while cutting down warriors with his rifle in the same motion. Park leapt from ridge to ridge, laying explosives that toppled whole columns of enemies. At one point, a Dravari squad cornered Lorne. He vanished into smoke, reappeared behind them, and when the haze cleared, only he stood. The civilians fled down hidden corridors, their transport ships rising one by one into the sky. For every minute the humans held, hundreds escaped. But the Dravari pressed harder. Explosives ran out. Ammunition dwindled. By the 3rd hour, the humans were fighting hand-to-hand, armor cracked, blood seeping into dust. A Dravari warlord shouted across the battlefield, his voice carried by amplifiers. "You cannot win. You are few, we are endless." Ward spat blood into the dirt and raised her blade. "Then you'll run out of bodies before we run out of will." They held until the last transport cleared the atmosphere. Then the humans fell back, detonating charges that collapsed the ridges entirely, burying thousands of Dravari under mountains of rock. By the time the enemy realized the trick, the humans were gone, pulled out by dropships that skimmed low through the chaos. The Dravari claimed victory. They had held the field. They had forced the humans to retreat. But the footage told a different story. Civilians saved. Legions stalled. 8 humans standing against 30,000 and walking away alive. Across the spiral, fear deepened. Commentators no longer asked if the footage was real. They asked a darker question: what kind of training creates soldiers like these? For the first time in millennia, the Dravari war machine, undefeated, unstoppable, looked vulnerable. Not to fleets. Not to empires. But to fewer than a dozen humans. In the mess hall of the Resolute Dawn, Ward sat with her squad, silent as ever. Hale's arm was in a sling. Park's armor was ruined. Lorne had a scar across his cheek, still raw. They did not speak of victory. They did not need to. Ward only raised her cup. To the civilians. Every one of them. The squad clinked their cups and drank. And somewhere across the galaxy, 1,000 alien eyes replayed their stand, whispering in fear. Legends written in fear. The sky above the colony world of Elandra burned red. Dravari warships filled the heavens, their shadows blotting out the sun. Sirens wailed across the settlements, warning civilians to seek shelter. But everyone knew the truth. There was no shelter deep enough to withstand what was coming. The Dravari had been humiliated too many times. Now they sought to end the human question once and for all. Annihilation, swift and final. In the command bunker, Captain Elena Ward studied the tactical display. Dozens of enemy dropships descended like meteors. Her Special Forces squad stood ready, battered but unbroken. Around them, colonists, farmers, miners, mechanics, gripped whatever weapons they could fashion. Shotguns, hunting rifles, even sharpened farming tools. Ward met their eyes. She saw fear, yes, but also the same stubborn spark she had seen in every ordinary human who refused to break. She raised her voice so all could hear. They think they can erase us with numbers. They think we'll beg for mercy. They're wrong. We are not prey. We are not weak. We are human. Ordinary or special, it doesn't matter. Today, we stand together. And today, they learn what that means. The cheer that followed was ragged, desperate, and fierce. The first wave slammed into the outskirts. Alien troops poured from drop pods, armored beasts with plasma spears. The colonists fired from rooftops and barricades, bullets cracking against armored hides. Where the enemy advanced, Special Forces struck, appearing from smoke, hitting hard, vanishing before the Dravari could rally. Ward moved like a phantom through the streets, her squad beside her. Hale wielded a captured plasma rifle like it was born to his hands. Park rigged buildings with traps, collapsing entire avenues on enemy patrols. Lorne moved civilians to safety between firefights, his rifle always covering their backs. But the colonists fought too. A farmer lit fuel lines beneath his fields, turning acres into fire traps. Mechanics hot-wired cargo haulers into battering rams. Even children carried water and ammo through the smoke. The line blurred, ordinary and special, side by side. Humanity in full. The battle raged into the night. The Dravari pressed harder, their commanders furious at the resistance. Dozens fell, then hundreds, but still they came. The colony's defenses cracked under the weight of endless bodies. In the command bunker, alarms screamed. Enemy reinforcements were landing near the central reactor. If they seized it, the colony would burn in a single detonation. Ward didn't hesitate. "We're going in." Her squad nodded as one. They fought their way through broken streets, each corner a gauntlet. By the time they reached the reactor complex, they were bloodied, armor scorched, lungs burning. The Dravari commander awaited them there, towering, clad in armor plated with trophies from 100 conquests. "You resist well," the commander growled, voice echoing through amplifiers. "But resistance is futile. Humanity ends tonight." Ward stepped forward, blade in hand. "So you keep saying, and yet we're still here." The duel that followed shook the chamber. Steel against plasma, speed against brute strength. The commander struck like a storm, but Ward moved with relentless precision, each motion honed by years of training in mud, snow, and fire. At last, with a twist and a thrust, she drove her blade through the gaps of his armor. The Dravari commander fell, his blood hissing against the reactor floor. Outside, the tide turned. Seeing their leader fall, the Dravari faltered. Colonists surged forward, ordinary men and women wielding tools as weapons, pushing the invaders back. The Special Forces pressed the advantage, every strike a hammer blow. By dawn, the battlefield was theirs. The Dravari fled to their ships, leaving thousands of dead behind. Silence settled over Elandra. Smoke curled from broken buildings, and the wounded cried out for aid. But the colony stood. Against impossible odds, it stood. Ward pulled off her helmet, sweat streaking her dirt-stained face. Around her, colonists embraced, children clung to parents, survivors wept with relief. She looked at them and saw not civilians, not soldiers, just humans. The galaxy had feared their ordinary. Now it had seen their extraordinary. Ward turned to her squad, voice hoarse but steady. "This isn't the end. They'll come again. But they'll never forget this day. Because today, they learned." She gestured to the colonists gathering behind her, farmers with rifles, miners with scars, children with eyes full of fire. "We are all Special Forces." Across the spiral, the footage spread like wildfire. Aliens whispered in awe and terror. Empires shuddered. The phrase passed from one tongue to another, from one fearful world to the next. The ordinary were nightmares. The special are legends. And in the hearts of humanity, ordinary and special alike, burned the same truth. They had survived. They would endure. And they would never, ever bow.